Good to see you today, and want to welcome those who are here as our visiting guests. And we want to say a special hello and welcome to the U.S. Brad Straley. Brad is serving alongside Sacom in Cambodia, and his mom and dad are with him, and he's going to be here for a few weeks. And and then in January, Brad is getting married. And I also want to welcome back a very special person, Mike's voice. I had laryngitis Wednesday. I'm almost back. I'm going to try not to ruin it, but talking softly is not really a very good, I'm not very good at it, so we'll do what we can. In the spring of 1987, Libby and I visited the Church of Christ down in Brownsville, Texas, with the possibility of moving there as we were leaving Waxahachie. And for those who don't know where Brownsville is, it is located on the southernmost tip of Texas, down at the very, very bottom of the state. In fact, there are businesses down there called Tipotex Chevrolet and Tipotex RV Park. There's even a little girls' kickball team called Tipotex Little Miss Kickball. I never knew there's a street called Southmost, a big, really busy road, and it never dawned on me till this week when I was putting things together. Oh yeah, Southmost. So there was Southmost Texas College, Southmost Elementary, Southmost Aviation, but didn't dawn on me till this week that, oh yeah, I see the connection now. I don't know why it was called Southmost. But when Libby and I visited there with the church and visited with the elders, they flew us down. And we flew into Harlingen. It's less than 90 minutes, I think, of a flight. I found out later that was a trick. But then when we moved to Brownsville in 1987 in July, I drove the U-Haul truck and trailer, and Libby drove one of the vehicles with some of the kids, and a couple of friends of ours from the church in Waxahachie, Bob and Nelta Dayton, they drove the other car down. And bear in mind that we grew up in Minnesota, and so we were just a few hours from the Canadian border. So we moved from Canada down to Mexico, basically what was happening. Also keep in mind there's no GPS back in 1987. We had a map, but you had to look at a map. I couldn't tell how big Texas is. Looked like just a few inches will be down there, you know. And so we get to San Antonio, and I think, oh, whew, all right, must be getting pretty close now. And then we drove a few more hours and got to the edge of Corpus Christi. I thought, good grief, where are we? Then went from Corpus, I had to drive across the King Ranch. Anybody ever driven across the King Ranch? I'm just curious. Okay. I mean, that's a long haul. And and we're going 43 miles an hour. That's the top end on this truck. And so, I mean, it was taking forever. And I'm driving across the King Ranch. I mean, it's just wilderness. And I don't know, I'm getting scared. I'm losing all confidence that I'm going to end up on the planet. I don't know what's going to happen. And then we finally come out of the King Ranch, and we come to a town called Raymondville. I didn't know it was Raymondville. I thought, maybe I'm here now. I didn't know. And this Raymondville, what is going on? I get on the phone. I call one of the elders, Art, down in Brownsville. I told him where we were. I said, we almost there? He goes, no, you got a ways to go yet. You still got a ways to go. And he's laughing at me. And I thought, man, we are driving off the edge of the earth. I'm thinking I'm going to fall right into, I don't know where I'm going to fall into. I'll be in outer space for long. After 14 hours, a little more than 14 hours, I had zero confidence as to where I was going to end up. I had no idea where we were going to go. We had 8 beautiful years there, working 95% Hispanic community. We had a blast there, palm trees and South Padre Island and all that stuff. But after 8 years, I felt like a piece of meat that needed to be hung in a freezer. It was so hot all the time. And being from up north, that was quite an experience. One of the preachers in the valley, along the Rio Grande Valley, Tommy Kelton, said, we are 200 miles south of the Great Commission. And I mean, we were down there. So what does all of this scary story have to do with my message today? And the answer is that we're going to address having confidence about reaching our destination as we look at Jesus. As opposed to the idea that I'm living, I'm dying with uncertainty, I don't know where I'm going to go. I will confess, when I was younger, before I became a Christian in my late 20s, I would shove it aside. I wouldn't think about it. And I didn't want to think about where I'm going to go when I die. And every once in a while there would be a funeral, and I would go to a funeral, and that's a wake-up call. And, I'd start to do a little self-examination, what's going to happen to me when I die. And pretty soon I'd get back into the world, and I was working and making money, doing all this and that, fishing, hunting, all that stuff, and I would just push it aside again. And there were times, I think, that I thought, I think when I die, if I die, I don't know, maybe I won't ever die, I don't know. I just push it off, that I'll just plead ignorance. And ignorance is bliss. So I just kind of push it aside. And maybe there's some of you that have gone through that yourself, where you just have not really addressed, do I have confidence when I leave this life as to where I'm going to go? We need to know at some point we're going to exit this life. Nobody gets out alive unless Jesus comes and we're alive. Everybody else, we're all going to be. And somebody reminded me last week, maybe 2 weeks ago, that they remember me saying off and on over the years on New Year's Day that some of you will not be alive to hear my next New Year's resolution sermon. And that's true, right? I mean, we've had some funerals this year, and it's not always people that are in their 80s, 90s, and 100 years old. Young people leave this life as well. And so it is critical that we have confidence that we know where we're going. Paul said in Philippians 3, our citizenship is in heaven, among which we eagerly await a Savior. We're waiting for Jesus to come with eagerness. We know this world is not my home. I'm just a passing through. And so Paul's confidence, he had confidence. For me to live is Christ, to die is gain. If I live, I keep preaching Jesus. If I die, I get to go and be with Jesus. Either way, I win. Paul knew where he was going. It wasn't based on his own good works. It was based on the good work of Jesus on the cross. But all of us can be and should be confident of where we're going to go, and that we can face death with confidence. And if we're honest, we won't deny it, we won't avoid it, we won't try to push it aside and just try not to think about it. That's a bad idea. The most important decision we ever make is, what's going to happen to me after I die? What's going to happen? I'm going to be somewhere forever, and we need to get that addressed. Well, on the cross, Jesus cries out with a loud voice in Luke 23, verse 46, Father, into your hands I commit my spirit. Jesus knew exactly where he was going when he left this life. In John 13, verse 3, he knows he had come forth from the Father, from God, and he knew that he was going back to God. In John 14, Jesus says, let not your heart be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house are many dwelling places. If it were not so, I would tell you so. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come back and receive you to myself, that where I am, you may also be. And Jesus says, I'm going to prepare a place. Jesus knew exactly where he was going. Total confidence because of who he is. So, there are two main thoughts that I want to look at in this saying, and a couple of things that revolve around it. But also, first and foremost, we want to be talking here about Jesus and who he is and what he has done for us. But we also will be able to take some things that we can apply to our own lives. So, first of all, I want to talk about the innocence that we see about Jesus when he's on the cross. Luke's gospel has several major themes that he continues to pepper throughout his gospel relative to Jesus and the Christian faith. Jesus is a minister to the outcasts of society. And so Luke 19:10, the Son of Man has come to seek and to save that which is lost. And so Jesus is not opposed to Judaism. He's not opposite Judaism, another major theme. Jesus is the fulfillment of Judaism, and likely because of what the Jews were saying about Christianity. And so it's only in Luke's gospel, twice in chapter 24, verse 27, and again in verse 44. Verse 44, Jesus says, everything that was written about me in the law of Moses and the prophets and the Psalms must be fulfilled. Jesus is saying, I'm not the opposite Judaism. I am the fulfillment of what God promised to Abraham 2,000 years ago. But another major theme in the Gospel of Luke is that Jesus is innocent. Rather than him being a troublemaker, and Theophilus, who he's writing to, he needs to know the truth about, and Luke tells him in verse 4, so that you will know the exact truth about the things that you have been taught. And so the innocence of Jesus is highlighted throughout this gospel, and that's a tough sell when Luke is trying to convince a Roman leader, who I believe that's who Luke is writing to, that this guy who was crucified, nailed to a cross, that's a place where the thieves and the wicked and the insurrectionists, that's where they go. And Luke is trying to help Theophilus come to know the exact truth about Jesus, that Jesus was innocent. He's the opposite of evil. He's the opposite of an insurrectionist. He's the opposite of violence. Then you add Acts, Luke's other writing that he wrote to Theophilus, where he shows that the Jews are accusing the Christians of being troublemakers. Probably the easiest reference to it in chapter 23, verse 4, Pilate, the Roman governor, says, I find no guilt in this man. In verse 14, he said to them, you brought this man to me as one who incites people to rebellion. Behold, having examined him before you, I have found no guilt in this man. And so you go down to verse 15. He's done nothing deserving of death has been done by him. In verse 22, what evil has he done? I found no guilt in this man demanding death. The thief on the cross tells the other thief on the cross, we're getting what we deserve. But this man, verse 41, he has done nothing wrong. Even, it's interesting, Matthew, Mark, after Jesus dies, the centurion says, the guard says, truly this was the Son of God, or the Son of a God. Okay, either way, but maybe that he was believing by that point. Hopefully he became a believer eventually, where Jesus was not just the Son of a God, but was truly the Son of God. Luke's gospel is different. Keep in mind there's more than one person there guarding him, and there were many things that could have been said even by that one man. But in Luke's gospel, what Luke records him having said is in verse 47, when the centurion saw what had happened, he began praising God, saying, surely this man was innocent. Not the Son of God, this man was innocent or righteous. And so one of the themes, or one of the things Luke is highlighting in his gospel, is that Jesus is innocent. He's the fulfillment of Judaism. He's not opposite Judaism as the Jews are claiming that we're doing. Luke's gospel is written about 30 years later, more or less, after Jesus has died, buried, raised from the dead, ascended back to heaven. There's been about 3 decades that have occurred. All this time, the Jews are doing everything they can to destroy Christianity. And so Luke writes his gospel and the book of Acts. He writes one of the major themes is that Christianity is not opposite. It's not evil. It's the fulfillment of everything that's been said from Abraham coming forward, that Jesus is truly the suffering servant Son of God. We looked at, my God, why have you forsaken me? We saw that it really has its roots, and the meaning of it comes out of Psalm 22. And you might have to go back and listen to it if you have questions about it. But Jesus is not screaming out in anger at God and the Godhead is split and all this other stuff. It's a psalm actually of a righteous man who is suffering, but he knows God is delivering. And he says that in the latter part of the psalm. Psalm 31 is also a connection to what Jesus says from the cross of one of his 7 sayings. And so if you have a Bible, you might want to turn to Psalm 31 while I grab some water. Psalm 31. Jesus says, Father, into your hands I commit my spirit, is a flowing out of Psalm 31. Similar to Psalm 22, it's a righteous man who is suffering unjustly. He is innocent, and he seeks God's deliverance. David may be sick, verse 9 and 10 allude to that. He may be the object of lies and traps. In verse 4, for instance, pull me out of the net which they have secretly laid for me. Also verse 18 and 20. He is scorned by his enemies and abandoned by his friends. In verse 11, because of all my adversaries, I've become a reproach, especially to my neighbors, and an object of dread to my acquaintances. Those who see me in the street flee from me. And so I am forgotten as a dead man out of mind. Verse 13, I have heard the slander of many. Terror is on every side. And so he's a righteous man who is suffering terribly. And then you see in verse 5, and we'll read verses 1 through 5. In you, O Lord, I have taken refuge. Let me never be ashamed. In your righteousness, deliver me. Incline your ear to me. Rescue me quickly. Be to me a rock of strength, a stronghold to save me. For you are my rock and my fortress. For your name's sake, you will lead me and guide me. You will pull me out of the net which they have secretly laid for me. For you are my strength. Into your hand I commit my spirit. You have ransomed me, O Lord, God of truth. Nobody fulfills Psalm 31 like Jesus. And remember, Jesus said, all things that were written about me in the law of Moses, in the prophets, and the Psalms had to be fulfilled. Jesus is fulfilling Psalm 31 as a righteous sufferer who's innocent, has done nothing wrong. And yet they're going to kill him. In verse 14, but as for me, I trust in you, O Lord. I say, you are my God. My times are in your hand. Deliver me from the hand of my enemies and from those who persecute me. And so he goes from anguish to having great confidence and assurance, like blessed assurance. And then he repeats it and goes from anguish in verse 9 through 24, great anguish, and then he has great assurance again. Jesus fulfills that like nobody else. Falsely accused, scorned, denied, betrayed, beaten, whipped, scourged, nailed to a cross. And as he's about to die, as he hangs on the cross, he says, Father, into your hands I commit my spirit. So, question would be, does the innocence of Jesus, does it have anything to do with us here in 2024? Well, there's a couple of quick applications we'll make before we move on. One is, this saying from the cross should increase our faith to follow Jesus with more loyalty. That we can see Jesus is not someone who is evil. We know that on this side of the cross, but because we heard about Jesus, he had not done wrong, etc. If you lived in the first century, that's not what you heard. And so for us, it gives us greater assurance and confidence that early Christians, as they suffered, they were suffering for what they knew as to be, this is the truth. This is the truth, and I need to be, I don't need to be a legalist about it and beat people up. I need for my own faith first and foremost, I need to know this is the truth. Luke is writing to a guy named Theophilus who has power to, Luke's head's next on the chopping block. So he can't be making up all kinds of stuff, writing any old thing he wants to write, and he even tells Theophilus, I interviewed the witnesses, etc. We see in Acts 21, verse 18, he goes into Jerusalem with Paul. They meet with people in Jerusalem. Luke's writing like crazy, getting all this information from the apostles and others who were living in Jerusalem, besides getting information from Paul. And Luke tells Theophilus, I've put all this stuff together, and I'm telling you this is the exact truth. You'll know it when I'm done. We should have that same kind of confidence. We should not have to walk around saying, well, I don't know, maybe all this is made up. Luke would say, hey man, my life was on the line. Think I'm going to make this stuff up? There's nowhere in the Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John where you can see any sort of fabrication. These are biographies that were common or somewhat common in that time, where they're writing about that individual's life. And that's what they do. And so we can have increased confidence as our culture becomes less and less tolerant of Christianity. We need to not falter and fall down we need to be strong and say, you know what, this is the truth. And I want to be with God. I want to be close to Jesus, so whatever happens, happens. Peter writes, he says, I urge you as aliens and strangers to abstain from the lusts of the flesh, which wage war against the soul. And he says to them, keep your behavior excellent among the Gentiles, so that in the thing in which they slander you as evildoers, as they observe your good works, may glorify your Father who is in heaven. Meaning, they'll see when you suffer for the truth, because we need to know this is the truth. This is not just some religion. It's not just some philosophy. It's just not a feel-good thing. This is the truth about the God who created this world, who died on a cross and paid for our sins. And I need to know, I need to have confidence, because at some point we're going to be confronted. What are we going to do about it? Are we going to be strong and say, no, this is the truth, and I may not have all the answers, but I can know in my own heart, I know that what I am following and believing is right. And sometimes when we're persecuted, just like in 1 Peter, they're slandered. They're not physically beaten, they're slandered. People lying about them. That happens to us too. And when that happens, we keep living right. And as a result of that, some people will end up becoming Christians, because that's one of the blessings of suffering for Christ, is that people end up seeing a person that stays faithful. It has an impact on their hearts. So, if we're convinced and convicted of Jesus, that he's the innocent, holy Son of God, we'll remain strong. Connected to that is that the innocent suffering of Jesus should produce some sort of fire in us. Man, I have to let other people know about this. I got to do something. I can't just live my own life and just stay in my own lane. I've got to do something to share my faith. It's so easy today. People share all this garbage on social media. Why do we not share things that we find that are Christian? Why not share, things that other people write, little video clips of things that are wholesome and righteous? Share them. Share your faith. If any of the morning devotionals that I do are worth being sent on, send them on. You got 50 people send them on. And you know what? If they don't like it, they'll tell you. And, I've had people tell me, I don't want to hear anymore. Stop talking. And that's all right. So what? What are we going to do? Just live our own little lives and not tell others about Jesus? It's so easy to invite people. We have to do more here at Walnut Hill. We have to say, I have to accept responsibility. Every one of us accept responsibility to share the truth. Not in a judgmental way, but in a loving way, that this is the truth about where people are going to spend eternity. So what am I going to do? Just I just got to live my own life. I don't want somebody to get mad at me. God forbid that. So what? So what? We got to stay faithful and share our faith. The book entitled Christian Theology in Plain Language. I didn't put this on the PowerPoint. I should have. It's easy to determine when something is on fire. It ignites other material. Any fire that does not spread will eventually go out. A church without evangelism is a contradiction in terms, just as a fire that does not burn is a contradiction. It's kind of like in our face, right? That a fire that does not spread, it's going to go out. How can we say we believe in Jesus and we know when we die, we have confidence we're going to leave this life and go to heaven, and we let other people around us not tell them that? What is that? We have to do more. And I hope as of whatever today is, September 22nd, I usually don't even know what month it is, September 22nd, we have to be committed ourselves that we want to do more. I'm not just want to. We're going to do more to share and invite people and encourage people to come to know Jesus in a greater way. The other major point I see in Luke 23, this statement by Jesus, is the confidence that he has that I started with. In John 19:30, Jesus says, "It is finished." Jesus knew exactly what he was doing. I have come, I have accomplished the work which you have sent me to do, in John 17. In Luke 23:46, Jesus knew exactly where he was going. So he knew exactly what he was doing, and he knew exactly where he was going. Sometimes people are confused. Well, I don't know what happened to Jesus after he died. Didn't he go to hell for 3 days? In Acts 2:27, he went to Hades and won't allow the Holy One to undergo decay, be in Hades. So, some translations, unfortunately, translate, thou will not, King James, thou will not leave my soul in hell. The NIV is better, you will not abandon me to the grave. That's how it translates the word. Nor allow your Holy One to undergo decay. Today's English version, you will not abandon my soul in the world of the dead. You will not allow your devoted servant to suffer decay. The New American Standard, you will not abandon my soul to Hades. It just translates it straight across. Nor allow your Holy One to undergo decay. Hades is the Greek word, the word in the Old Testament is Sheol. It's the realm of the dead. It could mean good or bad, but it for sure just means it's where dead people go. And so in Luke 23:46, the physical body went to the tomb. But Jesus says, Father, into your hands I commit my spirit. The body went to the tomb, the spirit went back with the Father. And on the third day, Jesus came back and went and united with his physical body and came back from the dead. He didn't go into hell for 3 days. Just prior to that, he tells the thief on the cross, today you'll be with me in paradise. Woo, going to paradise. Next thing you know, he's burning. What? What kind of paradise is that? No, it's with God in heaven. People are afraid that paradise, or you can't have paradise there, meaning heaven. Yes, it's in the presence of God. That's where Jesus went. Into your hands I commit my spirit. Jesus knew where he was going. Anyway, when he says, Father, into your hands I commit my spirit, Jesus is showing he's completed what the Father has sent him to do. He's done his destiny. He knows exactly where he's going. Even in his death, he's forgiving sins. Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. Even in his death, he saves the thief. Even in his death, Jesus has confidence and knows where he is going. In Psalm 31, verse 5, David has confidence, and he trusts as he turns himself over to God. Is this annoying? Sorry. It's really helping me. This could allow me to talk for another hour. Not really. People usually don't find that funny. So David has confident trust as he turns himself over to God. But there's a big difference between David, the psalmist, and Jesus. David calls God. Jesus calls him Father, indicating a totally different relationship. But here's the big one. David entrusts himself to God in the context of death or life. Jesus entrusts himself to the Father in the context of his death. So let me repeat that. It's on the PowerPoint. David entrusts himself to God in the context of life. Keep me alive. We could all do that. Jesus entrusts himself to the Father in the context of death. I'm dying, but I have total confidence and trust God. Big difference. This past June, I guess probably the end of June, our family spent a long weekend, kids and grandkids and spouses up at Lake Texoma in one of the rental houses, whatever you call them. And there's a lot of us now with kids and spouses, so it's kind of a zoo. I don't know how many bedrooms, I can't even remember how many bedrooms it had, but it was a big place. Libby and I got there first, and we had a couple of the kids with us. And so we did the right thing. We took the big bedroom, the master bedroom. But then we got sucker punched because we ended up with a couple of the little ones in the crib next to us. So we did the best we could. But we were there to welcome all of our kids and their families as they came in. It was just, they showed up at different times, driving up from Dallas area. We were excited as they would pile out of their vehicles and their kids, and everybody was happy and thankful, and everybody's, loves everyone they want. It's good for family to get together, for everybody to get to their destination. And I thought, you multiply that by 1,000,000 times. And that's how it's going to be for us when we get to our home in heaven. It's where we belong. There's a good song entitled that, Where We Belong. Our Heavenly Father is way 100,000,000 times more excited than Libby and I were for us to arrive. And those who walk by faith are equally excited for the day There's going to be a day when we leave this life. And you look at how Psalm 31 ends. Psalm 31, in the end of it, David speaks very confidently. And he says in Psalm 31, verse 23 and 24, "O love the Lord, all you his godly ones. The Lord preserves the faithful and fully recompenses the proud doer. Be strong. Let your heart take courage, all you who hope in the Lord." And Jesus says, "Father, into your hands I commit my spirit." Can you imagine? I want you just to think a minute. The possibility of you dying and you being on your deathbed and you know, I'm within hours of leaving this life. Are you going to be able to say, "Father, into your hands I commit my spirit"? Stephen did. Stephen said, "Lord Jesus, receive my spirit." And we have the truth about Jesus. And we follow him imperfectly. We have to repent daily of things we think, say, or do. But we can have confidence as we walk in the light, walking by faith. We have to be able to. We need to be able to. I've been by bedsides where people were scared to death and they had no confidence, and it breaks my heart. And it really breaks my heart when it's a Christian who's been faithful. They don't have the confidence. And the more we lean on Jesus, the more we get to know him. We need to be able to think, if I'm on my deathbed, I hope when you leave today you think about it. If I were to die today, or knew that I was going to die and I just had moments, would I be able to say, "Father, into your hands I commit my spirit"? We need to be able to do that. And if you don't have that same assurance that Jesus had, we should. When we've given our lives to Jesus Christ, we've been born again, sins washed away by the blood of the Lamb. We begin a new life. We're walking, following Jesus, striving to read, study, pray, grow, change, help, serve, etc. And we know salvation is never going to be anything that we can do to save ourselves. But we know if our lives revolve around Jesus, we know we can say that with confidence. And if somehow you may be here thinking, "Nah, I need to get my act together," you can call me. You can come up today during our invitation. That'd be great as well. But if I don't want anybody here today leaving here thinking, "I'm just going to push it, do what Mike did earlier in his life. I'll just push it aside. I'll leave here, and within several minutes I'll turn on a ball game and I'll do something else, and I don't want to think about it. I don't want to think about it." This passage helps us. We need to think about it. And if we can help you in some way, we want to invite you now. Let's stand and sing together.